And I think it's because we know from our past experiences that big things start small. The biggest oak starts from an acorn, and you've got to recognize, if you want to do anything new, you've got to be willing to let that acorn grow into a little sapling and then finally into a small tree, and maybe one day it'll be a big business on its own. What we're really focused on is thinking long term, putting the customer at the center of our universe, and inventing. Those are the three big ideas to think long term, because a lot of invention doesn't work. If you're going to invent, it means you're going to experiment, and if you're going to experiment, it means you're going to fail, and if you're going to fail, you have to think long term. So these three ideas, customer centricity, long-term thinking, and a passion for invention, those go together. That's how we do it. By the way, we have a lot of fun doing it that way.
You have been known to be somebody who is going to plant seeds and just wait. How do you deal with the pressure of, say, Wall Street, or you have a dot-com crash? I've never seen you panic. You stay the course and you sort of stick to your script. How do you do that, and how do you advise us to sort of internalize that as well as a strategy?
Well, I think that if you're straightforward and clear about the way that you're going to operate, then you can operate in whatever way you choose. And we don't even take a position on whether our way is the right way. We just claim it's our way. I don't think there's a particular recipe, but there are elements of what we do that I think help. So one of them is that inside our culture, we understand that even though we have some big businesses, new businesses start out small. To say, why are we doing these experiments with things? I mean, that generated, a tiny bit of revenue last year. And instead, that would be a natural thing to have happen. But instead, inside Amazon, when a new business, reaches some small milestone of sales, email messages go around and everybody's, giving virtual high fives for reaching that milestone. And I think it's because we know from our past experiences that big things start small. The biggest oak starts from an acorn, and you've got to recognize, if you want to do anything new, you've got to be willing to let that acorn grow into a little sapling and then finally into a small tree, and maybe one day it'll be a big business on its own. It's really central to the way we think about all of our business problems and a bunch of things at Amazon is we're long-term oriented. So I ask everybody to not think in 2 to 3 year time frames, but to think in 5 to 7 year time frames, to not think about, when somebody says to me, congratulates Amazon on a good quarter, but what I'm thinking to myself is, those quarterly results were actually pretty much fully baked about 3 years ago. And so if you start to think that way, it changes how you spend your time, how you plan, where you put your energy. And then the other thing I would advise any entrepreneur or large business or large organization, like a government organization, is you need to identify your big ideas. And there should only be 2 or 3 of them. And then if a senior leader, the main job of a senior leader is to identify 2 or 3 important ideas and then to enforce great execution against those big ideas. And the good news is that the big ideas are usually incredibly easy to identify. You shouldn't need to think about them very much. You already know what they are. Let me give you an example. For Amazon, the consumer business, the 3 big ideas are low prices, fast delivery, and vast selection. You don't need, it's not the kind, the way you know that they're the big ideas is because they're so obvious. The big ideas should be obvious. And by the way, it's very hard to maintain a firm grasp of the obvious at all times. So little things can distract you from the obvious. But you have to back up and say, these are the 3 big ideas. How do we always deliver things a little faster? How do we always reduce our cost structure so that we can have prices that are a little lower? And the good thing about these big ideas is they will be stable in time. So I know for a fact that 10 years from now, customers are still going to like low prices. No matter what happens, people are going to like faster delivery. It is impossible for me to imagine a scenario where 10 years from now, a customer comes to me and says, Jeff, I love Amazon. I just wish you delivered a little more slowly. This is so inconceivable that you can have great conviction as a leader to continue to put energy into driving speed of delivery. And whatever you're, in AWS, I know that customers, they like low prices, they like availability, they don't want the services to be down, they like data security. It's not very hard to figure out what the big ideas are, and then you can keep putting energy into those things, and you spin up those flywheels. And what I'm saying, I'm putting it in kind of a business context, but for those of you who are in government, these principles would apply identically to a government organization. You should figure out what the big ideas are and just spin up flywheels, get those things rolling, make sure that you've picked things that'll still be true 10 years from now, 20 years from now.